So I just caught up to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Recently, I started watching JoJo's for the first time in my life. And now that I've caught up, I can say that I've enjoyed every single part. Somebody commented that I loved every part. That might be a stretch. I'll put it like this. I loved 4 out of 6 parts. I enjoyed all of them. There was not a single JoJo's part that I thought was actively bad. In fact, if I went through JoJo's on an episode by episode basis, recalled every single episode of the anime that I watched, I would say there's maybe like 5 or 6 episodes that I thought was bad. Every other episode I was either indifferent towards or I thought was straight peak cinema, must watch TV, jaw on the floor, absolute masterpiece. There's a lot of those episodes, especially towards the later half of JoJo's. This is something I want to address because I did get some comments of people like, oh, you just say every part is the best part. First of all, not true. I don't want to give too much away because I want to make a video about every JoJo's part ranked in my opinion, but I've been pretty adamant about my love for part 4. So it's not like every part is better than the last, unless that's literally your opinion and you think it goes part 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's not my list, but that's not even a bad list, honestly. But despite that, I feel like it is undeniable that Araki got better as an author as the parts went along. And it's really impressive because when I got into JoJo's, I watched part 1. People were like, oh, just wait until part 2. You're going to love part 2. Watch part 2. Love part 2. Just watch part 3. You're going to like part 3. Part 4. I'm like, there's no way it can get better, right? On average, it gets better. Trust me, the more you watch JoJo's, it should get better because Araki as an author gets better himself as we are watching JoJo's. That itself is an aspect that I've seen in a couple of other anime. Like, I feel like Oda has gotten better as he's gone along, but One Piece is 5,000 years old, so I think it would be concerning if he didn't. But I feel like it's most noticeable here in JoJo's because we go from simple stone mask to literally the universe resetting now in part 6. And people still say that we haven't hit the peak of JoJo's because manga readers are telling me like, oh, just wait until part 7. That is the best one. And then I've seen people even talk about part 8. I'm like, whoa, you are too just intellectual in advance for me. I haven't even thought about, come on, I'm still worried about part 7 here. Like, we see Araki develop tropes as JoJo's goes on, and then we see him either drop those tropes if they're not good or make them even better. I think the most obvious, like just blaring improvement in all of JoJo's is the improvement from Hamon to Stans. Although I do want to stand up for my Hamon enthusiast out there because I too think that Hamon is quite underrated and not talked about as much. There was so much strategy, nuance, and it felt like every fight had so much personality and love with the Hamon power system. But stands are epic. So, point being that Araki has improved in multiple different facets of his writing. So again, not only are the parts typically getting better, of course it's all subjective, but it feels like we're not just following and we're not just tracking JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, but also Araki's journey as an author and seeing just how much he can improve as the series goes on. It actually gave JoJo's a lot of personality, and I can already see some people commenting, oh, that's so stupid, you're admitting that the first parts suck. First of all, no. Araki at his worst is a better writer than most, so keep that in mind. There was no way that I could have even fathomed after watching part 1 where we would be at the end of part 6. There was no way. In fact, when I got done watching part 1, I was like, it's good, it's enjoyable, I liked it. I don't see why everybody says JoJo's is peak though. I'm not understanding it. Then I finished part 6 and I was like, guys, this is, how can you not call this peak? This is amazing. So that might be one of my favorite aspects about JoJo's as a series. As a new fan that just got into it, the consistent elevation part after part after part. I gotta go back and rewatch Phantom Blood. I gotta go back and process this again. Like, how did we even get here? How do we get to the universe resetting? As a new fan of JoJo's, I also want to give props to one of my favorite aspects about the series as a whole, and that's the main antagonists. When it comes to like shonen that I've been watching recently, I feel like some of the ones that I've been watching lately have had pretty lackluster antagonists. I know what I'm gonna say is gonna get me like killed in the comments. I watched One Piece, loved One Piece. The antagonist didn't really do it for me though. So I took note of some anime that I had heard had some pretty great antagonists, and then I watched them. Those of course being Bleach and JoJo's, 2 anime that have literally changed my life. Like, I'm literally changed my life. But the point being is that I got into JoJo's, and one of the only things I knew about the series was that the antagonists were so good. Dio in specific, I didn't really know about cars or Diavolo or Kira or anybody else. But regardless, I was still expecting amazing antagonists. And you know what we got? I think amazing might be downplaying what we got. I think all the praise that I have for Dio kind of goes without saying. We all know it. We've all seen JoJo's, one of the most iconic villains in all of anime. And writing wise, from part 1, extremely good. And it got better as the series went on, because as the series went on, it starts unraveling. Dio had a hand in this. Dio had a hand in that. Dio was here on this specific date, and that led to this happening, and that led to that happening, and this part and that part, and it's all intertwined, and Dio brings it all together. You can go look at my part 1 video where I'm talking about stuff that I want to see from JoJo's before I even watch it. One of the things that I brought up was having it all intertwine in some giant spider web come the end of JoJo's. Now that I've finished part 6, I can tell you that spider web that ties everything together, it's there, and it was made by Dio single-handedly. How can this not be one of the greatest antagonists of all time? Dio himself is a testament to Araki's improvement as an author, because somehow, some way, the more the parts go on, the more important Dio becomes. Even when he's not alive, you can completely cut out everything that happened part 3 and before. The way that Dio was written after his death is way better written than a lot of anime antagonists out there, at least from the anime that I've watched. I haven't watched too many. I watched like 30. And again, of course, all of this is subjective, but I don't know, if somebody were to watch JoJo's and wholeheartedly tell me that they didn't think Dio was a good antagonist, I might side-eye them a little bit, you know. And I said that I wanted to praise Araki for his antagonists, plural. I've only talked about Dio. Then you have Cars, who honestly, in the grand scheme of everything, might not have been that great of an antagonist within the world of JoJo's, but he was still very good and very enjoyable. I feel like that's the #1 priority when it comes to anime. You know, sometimes I'll be talking to anime and somebody will bring up a character and be like, oh, well, it's clear that this character was written by an aristocrat. And it's like, okay, but did I enjoy them? To me, enjoyability is paramount, no matter how simple, which is funny because I don't like Solo Leveling, but you know, whatever, I digress. And Cars was the epitome of that. Very enjoyable antagonist, not as fleshed out as Dio, Kira, literally any other main antagonist in JoJo's. But it was really when I got to Kira where I realized Araki just has a knack for writing phenomenal antagonists. And then he kept that up for every single main antagonist after that. Diavolo's a little bit hit or miss, but just like Araki's writing, his antagonists, the worst of them, are some anime's best. And I don't even like saying the word worst, because when I say worst, some people hear bad. Diavolo's not bad by any stretch. He's a very solid antagonist, and that might be the worst one, a solid one. Like a good 7, 8 out of 10. If that's not a testament to Araki's character writing, then I don't know what it. Actually, I do know what is. As somebody who is new to JoJo's, I didn't know much about it. You can literally go back to my first JoJo's video, and I'm calling Jonathan JoJo throughout the entire thing because I thought he was the only I thought he was JoJo, like the only one. But my point is, as a new fan of JoJo, somebody who was going in practically blind into the anime, I didn't know what I would think about the concept of like, oh, the main character changes every single part, mostly because it was different. Like, I don't know if there's any other anime out there like that. I know some anime have experimented, like during York New City, Kurapika's pretty much the MC for that part, but never something to this extent where we have what, presumably 9 different main characters by the time that JoJo's done. Logically, I think what anybody's first concern should be when you hear about having different main characters per part is, what if I just don't like them? That was my biggest concern. What if I get attached to one main character and then the next main character I absolutely cannot stand? Because the result of that would probably be something like being bitter that a character I love is gone and now I'm stuck with some super duper corny lame bum. Sorry, but that was a real concern of mine, and I can't wait to get to the point where I meet somebody who says that they are about to start JoJo's and they share that same concern, because I get to tell them literally how amazing every single main character in JoJo's is. I have like a 3-way tie for my favorite JoJo. It's not easy. You know, if I were to like guesstimate, I would say there's like 1 B tier JoJo, 2 A tiers, and like 3 S tier main characters in this series. How does Araki do it? His character writing writing is out of this world. And not just the character writing itself, but how quickly he's able to get you to care about them to begin with. And I think the reason these characters get you to gravitate so quickly towards them is because they are, you know, no joke, bizarre. For the most part, they're not like any other character in it. Like, is there another character like Joseph that will call out what the villain is about to say before they say it, blow their mind, and then hit like a runway supermodel pose before kicking his ass? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are characters like that. I haven't seen them. There's no character like Giorno Giovanna that is super dead serious, wants to be a mafia boss, to take drugs off the street, very interesting goal, and can also turn his ear inside out. Like, these characters are so absurd that there's nothing like it in anime. This is a complete one-of-one unique experience, unique anime. I'm kind of gushing over it because one of my biggest gripes with anime after I finished watching Bleach was that everything past Bleach, everything after that just felt generic. And JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is like the antithesis of that. You want generic? You better get lost. Go find another anime, because you're not gonna find it here. It's literally in the name. And I suppose I want to talk about something else from JoJo's that caught me by complete surprise, because while I had heard of Dio, I had heard of some main characters like Jotaro and whatnot, something that I was completely blind to was the world building. Nobody told me that JoJo's would have such unique world building. I've said in past videos that I think when it comes to world building, there's two anime that stick out in my mind. Obviously One Piece and Made in Abyss. I'm not gonna put JoJo's in that category. I feel like those two anime are pretty far above the rest when it comes to world building, but JoJo's might be like an echelon under that. And the reason for that is probably because a lot of the time the anime is focused on like the stand fights and the story more than the world building itself, but we just visit a lot of cool places, so the world building is really good by proxy of that. Like, how many different countries do we visit in part 2 and 3, and seeing the real life influences of those places within like the background of JoJo's. I think what sticks out to me the most, because it's so recent, is part 6 taking place in Florida, and Araki making sure that he got the alligator, you know, I suppose stereotype of Florida in. It's more nuanced than that in the parts where we actually explore a lot more countries, like in part 2 and part 3. I still remember part 2 so vividly, and them starting off in New York City and then Joseph going off to Mexico, and of course the Stardust Crusaders stopping at all these different countries to get to Egypt to fight Dio. But I think the coolest part about the world building in JoJo's, and this could probably be said about literally every aspect and facet of JoJo's, is the individuality between parts. Because I just talked to you about part 2 and 3 and visiting all these different countries, and then get to part 4, we're just in Morio. Get to part 6, we're not even traveling anymore, we're just in Florida, we're in a prison. We go to Orlando, that's not a different, that's just a different city at max, right? So we have parts where we're literally holed up in a town to parts where we're literally traveling the world. And you would think that, oh, you know, one is superior to the other because they are so drastically different. You know, like that would be a fairly logical conclusion. Oh, these parts have different styles of world building, you know, surely one is better than the other. They're both great. Like that's pretty much what I'm trying to convey about JoJo's throughout this entire video. Araki can decide to do something, do it phenomenally, and then decide to do something completely different and still do the completely different thing amazing as well. And I think that's why so many people have so many different opinions when it comes to JoJo's, like, oh, what's your favorite part? Because they're all different, but none of them feel worse than the other. So for example, it's like, oh, I like part such and such because it did X, Y, and Z differently. Like in my opinion, I like the way the world building was handled in part 4. That's just my opinion. I like the fact that we stayed in one little town because it let Araki flesh out the town, as opposed to visiting all these different countries and then those countries don't receive as much love as Morio did. But that's not to say that the world building in part 2 and 3 was bad. It's just a personal preference. Like, pick your flavor. I've just never seen an anime, and again, I have a limited experience watching anime, but from the ones that I have seen, there's been not a single anime with as many changes stylistically as JoJo's. Because most animes are pretty static when it comes to their style. The author will find one way to convey what they want to convey, and you either like it or you don't. When it comes to JoJo's, Araki will find so many different ways to convey different themes, ideas, so on and so forth, and all of them are good. The versatility was just unmatched. There's no other anime like this. And I think some of the last stuff I want to say about JoJo's before I close this off, I feel like I've been kind of like nerding out throughout this entire video, but that's because JoJo's has reignited my spark for anime. I finished JoJo's about a week ago, and when I was done with it, I thought I would kind of like sigh relief, like, wow, that was a long series, because that's kind of what I do with most series. It's like, I finished Bleach, okay, time to take a little anime break. Finish One Piece, time to take a little anime break, right? JoJo's was pretty long in itself, but but something about it and how different it all felt and how unique it was to me as like an anime watching experience, I suppose it opened my eyes. And there's like, look, even when anime feels like it's getting generic, even when anime feels like it's getting stale, there's gonna be an anime out there that's gonna blow your mind with how unique and creative it is. And JoJo's is definitely in that boat. And then after I finished it, it made me want to search for other anime that are in that same category. Ended up watching Serial Experiments Lane, Taco P's Original Sin. I'm kind of on a hot streak right now. It's actual cinema after cinema after cinema, like, and it's all because JoJo's was the reminder that there are still groundbreaking anime out there. I have people telling me to watch Code Geass. I'll probably watch that soon. Of course, I'll continue making JoJo's videos because there's so much to talk about still. But yeah, kind of just want to give my thoughts on JoJo's, the anime, after I got done watching it. I'd like to know other people's like overarching thoughts on JoJo's too, but when I say stuff like that, it sounds like I'm engagement baiting, but what can you do, right? Thank you guys for watching. I love JoJo's forever. Take care, everybody.